Alright, you guys, welcome back into another One Piece poll video. If it's your first time here, you may be wondering, Sai, what is this? What is going on here? Well, every now and then here on this channel, I like to throw up a poll in regards to the latest chapter, One Piece in general, or just certain theories, to see what the grander community has to say about them. The reason I do this, I always reiterate this time and time again, but it's because I'm just one guy. I'm a guy with a YouTube channel, a microphone, a camera, and that's pretty much it. My opinion is just as valuable as your guys's. So I do like throwing up these polls just to see what everybody has to say about these theories, and that is what we're here to look over. We're here to look over the poll results and read through some of the comments, and of course, I will weigh in with my own personal opinions here and there. But yes, hopping right into it, the first poll is about the traitor amongst the Rock's pirates. So in 1157, Whitebeard dropped down when he saw all the Marines showing up to the Foot Colony, and he said, they showed up really quickly. Was our intel perhaps leaked? Which, of course, insinuates that there is a Marine traitor amongst the Rock's pirates. That is Whitebeard bringing up his own theory and suggestion on the scenario. That doesn't have to be the case. So, I threw up the question right here. Is there actually a traitor within the Rock's group? And it looks like overwhelmingly, a lot of people voted, yes, there is a traitor. Of course, if I had more room to type this out here, I would say Marine traitor -WG traitor, but I just opted for this right here, kept it nice, short, sweet, and simple, and that got 89% of the votes. Whereas no only ended up getting 11% of the votes. Kind of crazy, right? Because I think at some point it would be cool to see that the Marines are just that intelligent. Their intel gathering is just that superb that they're able to pinpoint wherever Rocks is going to next. That'd be beautiful. But of course, the Marines have never really been them on that front. So as far as the traitor goes, I do believe that there is one. A Marine traitor specifically. And if I had to put money down, it would be very tough. I will say that. It would be very tough to pinpoint one specific traitor. And that's because there's so many good options. I've talked about Don Marlone potentially being one, because he's kind of like Capone Beige, and Capone Beige 100% betrayed Big Mom. Beige planned on killing Big Mom during the wedding celebration. That is foul. And he was cosplaying as one of her subordinates in the meanwhile. So yes, Don Marlone, I could see him being very underhanded. Another character would be Stussy, because back on Egghead Island, the clone version of Stussy betrayed Vegapunk and then later betrayed the world government. So yeah, it could be Stussy. Another character I throw out there personally is Kyou, Silver Axe. Kyou is one of the few characters amongst the Rock's pirates that did not join via Davy Back Fight. So he doesn't have to pledge his loyalty to Rocksteady Xebec per se. And not just that, but his rival, the Golden Lion Shakky, is amongst this group. And it just felt kind of odd that Silver Axe, instead of wanting to combat the Rock's pirates and fight Shakky, he joined the Rock's pirates instead. So I was like, okay, like, he definitely has some sort of plan. He definitely wants to beat Shakky somehow, some way. So maybe this is his ploy. You know, maybe he follows the Rock's pirates and then constantly calls the Marines upon them. Another thing I think that's really interesting about Kyou is that he does remind me of X-Drake. X-Drake, of course, Diaz Drake, whatever you want to call him, he has this iconic X mark on his chin, which is weird, right? Very odd design. And Kyou has that exact same X scar on his chin as well. And then he also has like the X's on his glasses, and it's like, okay, it could be him. Right, you know, because X-Drake was like a Marine traitor. He's a rear admiral, actually. So, yeah, I put my money on Kyou, Stussy, and Don Marlone. And now, with my opinion out of the way, let's see what everybody else has to say about this. So, the first comment right here says, it would be hilarious if there was more than one traitor in the Rock's pirates, and there were completely separate reasons and don't know about each other. The Rock's crew has a lot of disloyalty. Yes, and that is what happens when you gather your crewmates exclusively, well, almost exclusively via Davy Back Fights. There's bound to be some bad blood there, and I bet there's some people who don't even want to be a part of the Rock's Pirates or a pirate in general. Because I just finished rewatching Long Ring Long Land. I'm currently on Water 7. And back when Chopper was taken, and back when Zoro was almost taken, Zoro was like, hey, the only reason I became a pirate is because of Luffy. I have no reason to be one if I was under Foxy. So I could see a bunch of Rocks pirates not wanting to be a part of the group for that reason, or maybe just because they have a lot of hubris, you know? A lot of these Rocks pirates later on become their own captain. So yeah, you got a lot of egos in the room. I'm sure a lot of them would be kind of happy if Rocks bit the dust. This one says, they're all traitors. They've all openly stated they have no loyalty to Rocks or each other. That is true. You know, to some extent, they are all traitors. But I would say this traitor is very specific, right? It's one thing to be a Shakky and drop a bomb on Kaido, Wang Ji, and Kyou, but it's another thing to call the Marines and say, hey guys, you know, kill Rocks, he's over here. You know, so I do agree to an extent, they are all traitors, but this is a very specific traitor. But also, going back to this comment too, I do think it would be funny if multiple people were calling the Marines. Like, imagine that, right? Like, the Marines show up, and then you have, like, 5 people run out saying, hey, I'm glad you guys came. He's over here. And then it's like, you know, Whitebeard, Shakky, Captain John, Wang Ji, they're all pointing at Rocks. That'd be kind of nuts. It'd be like the Spider-Man meme back in the day, right? Where you got, like, 3 Spider-Mans pointing at each other. To quote Tekking 101, Stussy is sussy. Okay, yeah, that sounds like something Tekking would say. Shout out to Tekking, man. Love that guy. Yes, and it's probably the dude that Oda decided to show willingly looking to join the Rocks group. It seemed weird how Silver Axe got his own little intro and paid to himself, while every other member is almost always sharing it. I don't think it's a coincidence. That is true. That is very true, right? Silver Axe did get his own little introduction spot, whereas other characters were just poofed into existence, right? Like Barbell. Barbell just showed up. Here's a panel, introduction, moving on. Kyou had like 2 pages to himself, so Oda did put that extra spotlight on him. This one says, I think if there was a traitor, it would be Wang Ji, because after the death of Rocks, he somehow managed to inherit Pirate Island. And I think that if Rocks and Wang had a story like that, it would make this whole Blackbeard Caribou situation more interesting. You're not wrong. Yeah. If Caribou does have a connection to Wang Ji, which I do think is a very popular theory, I'll throw that up in the next poll, then this could make that whole dynamic a lot more interesting, right? Wang Ji wanted Pirate Island for themselves. They wanted Rocks' operation. So, boom, you call the Marines. And another thing to keep in mind is that it is also interesting that the Marines kind of let Wang Ji slide for all these years. Wang Ji took over Pirate Island after Rocks Xebec fell, and the Marines didn't do anything about it, right? They literally let the guy sit there for all these years. The first Marine that showed up to that island was Kobe, who was a part of Sword, who can ignore mini orders. So maybe that is a hint right there. I do like the Wang Ji route. I haven't really thought too much about it, but I think that is solid. At first, I was like, it must be Kyou. Then I wondered that this might be too obvious for Oda's usual style. Stussy makes way more sense in my opinion. Okay, here's the thing though. I agree with you. It could be Stussy, but get this. That's also kind of obvious for Oda's style, right? Now, Kyou might be obvious, so now let's go to Stussy, somebody who already betrayed everybody. Like, I think Stussy's also very obvious. Like, it's so weird because so many of these options are viable, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of them are very viable. She's not introduced as a pirate, but as a science thief. She'll later become a part of MADS, which will then get integrated into the SSG of the WG. There's a literal clone of her working for CP0, who is working undercover in the underworld, and the real Stussy created Weevil and joined up as a warlord. Working for the Marines-World Government yet again. Yeah, I think it's Stussy, yeah. And going back to Tekking, Stussy is sussy. And of course, once a traitor, always a traitor. It could be her. You know, it could be that the answer is right in front of us the entire time. I do like where you went with this, though. Saying, yeah, like, by the way, she joined as a warlord. Maybe the reason she was able to do that is because of her previously established connections. So I do like this route a lot. Good job, brother. What a name, though. Struffy the Clown. I love clowns, dude. Especially clown girls. My god, dude. Clown girls, huh? 1,000,000% Silverax, bro, just walks into the pirate island and was like, hello, fellow pirates. Where shall I find rocks? That's a really funny way to word it. Hello, fellow gangsters. Who here sells the paraphernalia? Yeah, he does give off those vibes. And I remember back when the spoilers were circulating, the leakers said that Silverax kind of looked like the Admiral from film Z Zephyr. So it's like, maybe that's also another hint, right? They both have that big build. They have like the whole like chest out thing going on. Maybe that is a hint. Like I said, a lot of these options are just very in your face, right? There's not a bad option per se. Well, okay, I will say this. The only bad option, in my opinion, would probably be Whitebeard. I don't know why. I just can't imagine Whitebeard calling the Marines and telling them, hey, kill rocks over here, you know? Like, that just feels weird. You know, maybe if it does happen, Oda can, you know, gloss over it and make it feel better, but I just can't see Whitebeard being that guy. That is the one theory I will go against. For now. The Rock True was bound to implode. The latest chapter clearly showed us that it is everyone for themselves. That is true. Gloriosa probably turns traitor in God Valley. The Kuja just can't resist a chance to help their crush. I think a lot of people actually will turn traitor in God Valley. You know, because Rox has so many egos around him and so many people gunning for themselves, as you guys pointed out, I wouldn't be shocked if Rox needs help. Like, imagine Rox is fighting somebody, I don't know, Garling, Garp, Roger, and he's about to win. He's like, guys, come on, one final blow, we got this. And then he looks behind him and everybody is running for the hills. That'd be sad. That would be really sad. You know, put Luffy in that situation. Here comes Zoro, here comes Sanji, Nami, Usopp, yada yada. But imagine Rox. He turns around and nobody's there. That would be... I'm gonna admit, I feel kind of bad for Rox at that point. This one says, it's Stussy. Her clone is a spy, so why not the original? I don't think there is a specific traitor because the Rox pirates naturally hate each other. It's not that hard for them to turn on each other. That's the main reason why they imploded. That is true. That is true. That is true. Like I said, though, you know, when it comes to traitor, maybe I should have worded this better, but I wish I put Marine traitor, you know, like Marine World Government traitor. I think because I made this too broad, everybody's like, come on, Sai, like, of course they hate each other. It's like, guys. Marines. To be honest, I think they can all be considered traitors depending on the day of the week. That's kind of funny. I think it's Barbell. Oh, Barbell. This is a new one. All right. Barbell from a guy named SFP Fisher. Fisher, huh? A fisher selling out a fish bin. Man, that's a tough day. I think it's Barbell. I also think he is the man marked by flames because of the hair. He betrayed Rox, got the poneglyph from Fishman Island, and is now keeping it from pirates by making whirlpools. Don't have an explanation for the black ship yet, but I'm on to you, fish. Oh no, look at that. He hates fish. Called this guy a fish face. I love that. I do like this theory. I do feel like out of all of the man marked by flame theories I have seen, as odd as it is to say, I do think that Barbell is the best one. And that's simply because there's not a lot of options out there, right? I haven't heard of a man marked by flames theory that has sold me yet. So kind of like how I don't believe Tritoma is Luffy's mom, but I also believe that's the best theory we have as of 2025. I do think the same way about this, right? I don't think Barbell is the man marked by flames, but it is our best option as of right now. Okay, so on to the next poll. So this is where we get a little bit silly. I simply asked, what was the main reason the Rox and Roger Pirates went to God Valley? Was it for Shakky? Was it for the Devil Fruits? Or was it for something else? And the reason I asked this is because whenever I had my review video, a lot of people are saying, oh, Sai, like, they didn't want Shakky, right? They didn't go there for Shakky. Shakky wasn't on their minds. They went there for X, Y, or Z. So I wanted to see if I was getting like one or two guide, or if that was the general consensus. And as we see right here, 72% of people do believe that Shakky was the main reason for all these figures going to God Valley. 12% believe it's for the devil fruits, and only 16% believe that it is something else. I put something else because I don't know what else it would be. Like, maybe they're there for the Celestials, maybe they're there for a specific character, like maybe Garling, like, oh, let's take down Garling, or ooh, let's take down Saturn, or ooh, let's save the slaves. So that is why I put something else. But yes, I did want to, again, extrapolate the word main here. I'm looking for the main reason. And I do go back to the Garp and Kong panel where they're talking about God Valley, and Kong is like, hey, you know, there's reports that the Rocks pirates are on the move. And then Garp says, yeah, of course they are. What do you expect? You poke the hive by taking the treasure of their island. Of course they would want it back. And that dialogue right there is what does lead me to believe that Shakky is the main reason for God Valley. Of course, there can be other reasons, right? This could be reason number 2, reason number 3, 4, 5. We can keep on going down the list. But based on that dialogue, it does sound like Shakky is the number 1 reason. And another thing we have too is this latest chapter. The narrator doesn't just call Shakky the treasure of Hachinosu. No, they go a little bit further and say, hey, when you have a treasure this grand, it's only natural that somebody would want to steal it. So it seems like even the narrator is building up Shakky getting kidnapped. So I do think that Shakky is the main reason. And of course, we'll get into more of this here in a bit. But until then, I do want to go through the comment section. This one says that Oda is a level 99 gooner. So this makes sense. That is true. Right? Some people think that Oda is a prude, that Oda isn't a gooner. But I implore you guys, please read the SBSs. Half of the time, Oda is talking about boobs, crotch, or just something else entirely. Yes, Oda is a gooner, 1,000,000%. The One Piece might actually just be Shakky's bathing suit. Yeah, this is an old theory. Not Shakky's bathing suit per se, but it is an old theory that the One Piece might actually just be a one piece, like a bathing suit in general. Which I do think could be the case. You know, jokes aside, I do think that whatever the One Piece is, it might be a gag or a joke. Of course, there's going to be treasure there, there's going to be lore, Void Century stuff, etc. But I think the main One Piece could be a little bit of a meme. Which is why whenever you look at One Piece theories, like half of them are probably just jokes for the most part. The Goon Piece is real. Streets are saying the reason Dragon and Akainu have beef is over some woman. Huh, honestly, you're not coming from a bad angle. The Goon Piece is real. Streets are saying Dragon and Akainu have beef over a woman. That is oddly satisfying. So, I might hold a poll on this again. How do you guys feel about this one? I don't think that would be bad. You know, because when I think of Dragon and Akainu, they're around the same age, they joined the Marines around the same time, they know each other.
Akainu.
When he heard that Luffy was at Marineford, he would not shut up about, oh, the Son of Dragon, huh? Son of Dragon! Somebody get the Son of Dragon! Dragon definitely did something foul to Akainu. Personally, before this comment, I assumed that Akainu was just really mad that Dragon quit being a Marine. Like, maybe he really needed his ally or partner there, and the Dragon just didn't show up. That's why I thought Akainu hated Dragon. But maybe it is over a woman. And the reason I kind of like this is because I think about the older generation, right? From 1157 even, of Garp, Sengoku, and Sudo. Imagine that was Dragon Akainu, and then they had like a third person who was a girl, right? Like the Team 7 dynamic, or the Naruto dynamic of teams. And maybe she died, or maybe they fell in love with Dragon and they left. That could be kind of interesting, yeah. I would not hate this. I feel like some people would. Because we already have the whole Shakky plotline, some people might say, hey, it's getting redundant, but I don't know. I don't think that's bad at all. It could even be Luffy's mom. I think that'd be interesting. Luffy comes from a Marine mom. Kind of nuts. This one says, Prime Shakky had even Rocks and Newgate acting a fool. Yeah, they were hitting the Sanji poses, man. Crazy how the Roger slander last chapter is about to become the world truth. I'm really hoping we see even the God Knights reacting with Gooner eyes. They will. 100% the God Knights will as well. I wouldn't be shocked if Garling stops for a second and he's like, whoa, Shakky, my God. Because you gotta imagine, right? The Celestial Dragons went out of their way to get Shakky. They went to Pirate Island to kidnap this girl. Yes, 100% there's going to be at least one God Knight with Gooner eyes. The One Piece is going to be Emu's pants. I can already see it. Roger was laughing because he didn't expect Joy Boy to be a Gooner as well, yeah? Joy Boy, huh? All us men are the same in every era. So Shakky is like Helen in the Trojan War, yes. Like I said, I didn't do too much research on the Helen of Troy, but from what it seemed, you know, from the AI overview, an entire war was waged over one woman looking pretty damn fine. Pretty much what happened here. Glad Roger got his name cleared. Everyone was after that chick Hussy, yes. And the thing with Roger, right? I think just because Rox is also a Gooner over Shakky, that is not what cleared Roger's name, in my opinion. What, quote, cleared Roger's name is the fact that he's not your typical Gooner. He's a big tier Gooner. He's like a Grand Master Gooner. He's willing to go so far for Shakky that he went to God Valley and fought top tiers. I think that shows another level of dedication to Goonery, and I love it. You know, now that we know that she is the reason why they all showed up, it's like, yeah, that's a huge W, right? Somebody gets kidnapped, you go after him. And, you know, gooning aside, I love that whole thing where it's like, yeah, our friend is gone, we're gonna save him. It would really ruin Rox's stocks if he only came to God Valley for Shakky. He seems to be following a certain plan to beat Emu. Or I'm assuming he means following a certain plan to beat Emu. So him dropping his goal for a bartender would be wild. I believe he's after the second ability he needs that's not the Elbaf Devil Fruit. A treasure that's related to Captain John's treasure, or maybe something Poneglyph related. So here's the thing, right? When it comes to the whole, oh, you know, he's dropping his goals to save Shakky, I don't believe this. The reason why is because it's not like Rox went to that island knowing that he would die. I'm assuming that Rox, in his mind, expected to win Shakky back and get the Devil Fruits, get the extra money, potentially get some Celestial Dragons, and etc. Like most people, whenever they go out to an adventure or a battlefront, they don't expect to lose, right? Like, look at this chapter, right? In this chapter, the Rox pirates just went out of their way to steal money from the Foot Colony or Fat Colony, whatever translation you guys read. That isn't related to the Devil Fruits. That isn't related to the Galley-Law Giants. No, that's just him doing some shenanigans on the side. And then we had like a whole rundown of different things he's done, right? Destroying ports, taking down towns, Article 18 violations, 25 criminal activities that were erased from history. Rox did a lot of things. So Shakky, saving Shakky from God Valley, this was probably another Tuesday for him. That's my argument right there. This is probably just another Tuesday to Roxy Xebec. And of course, like I said, he could come out on top with more Devil Fruits, treasure, etc. But I do think that Shakky was the main reason. Right now, as of all the dialogue we have, the narrator panels, etc., there's nothing to disprove that Rox didn't go there primarily for Shakky. Whereas we do have evidence to show that he did go there for Shakky. That is my main thing. You can't be a Gooner pirate without gooning, so of course they went for Shakky. There was likely more than one reason, and two crew reasons, that don't necessarily have to be the same. That is true. This is 100% true. Each and every character has their own agency. Like Whitebeard, for example, and Shiki. What's funny is that coming into God Valley, a popular theory was that they ate their Devil Fruits there. That's why they were so excited to be on that island, right? Shiki said, oh, I'm going to blow you all to bits and I'll get my hands on them first. Whitebeard was also gunning for it, so much so that Stussy was like, wait, not you too, Newgate. Because of those dialogue lines, a lot of people thought that Whitebeard and Shiki were going to eat their Devil Fruits there. But because of this latest chapter, we now know that they had these Devil Fruits prior to God Valley. So what are they so gung-ho about, right? What is Shiki and Whitebeard ready to go after? What is that treasure? It was probably Shakky. And we can't forget that, of course, they were included in that final panel where they were all kind of heart-izing over her. Heart-izing, that sounds a little bit strange. Shakky could have been the catalyst, but Rox was always going to go after the WG. We're better than an island where so many Celestials congregated, especially their fighters. Roger could have gone to save Shakky, but also to confront Rox about something we don't know about their history yet. That is true. I like this, right? Everybody could have a different reason. Rox probably just went for Shakky, but of course he saw this as a, like, double EXP weekend. That's the best way I could put it. Double EXP weekend, you save Shakky, you fight the Celestials, you get the Devil Fruits. This island, going here, it's a win across the board for them. They have to have went there for the Goon War. Oda is setting this up so he can 100% use this to foreshadow Emu being a Mega Simp. What's funny about this, you know, Emu being a Mega Simp, you're not completely wrong. Like, Emu, for some reason, he has this infatuation, or he or she, we don't know the gender, Emu has an infatuation over Vivi, right? Bring me Vivi. Didn't say dead, just bring me Vivi. Alive, presumably. And not just that, but Emu, in their special flower room, just so happens to have a picture of Queen Lily. Brother, that was 900 years ago, and he has a picture of Lily up there. Why? Gotta be a Mega Simp. Gotta be a Mega Simp. I think Roger just wanted the smoke. All the pirates were going, and there were 2 Devil Fruits as prizes. And also, maybe because Shakky was there. I like how you added this in. Also, maybe Shakky was there too. And what's funny too about this is that when you go back to the God Valley flashback with Kuma, Ginny said that she leaked the prizes, plural prizes. And then she said among them is Kaido's Devil Fruit, and then of course the Pawpaw Fruit. So there's other prizes that Ginny broadcasted. She just only told us about 2 of them. So yeah, so we don't know what the other prizes were. I'm assuming the main one was Shakky, or maybe like, you know, a top tier prize was Shakky. All right, so this comment right here says, Shakky better not be the reason for God Valley, because that would mean that Rox threw away everything he planned for a woman who wouldn't have or date him. Imagine Dragon, after years of building his revolutionary army to fight against the whole world, he threw it down the toilet and died because he wants to score with some chick. Terrible writing. See, like I said, I really don't think Rox viewed it as, oh, I'm gonna throw everything away for her. It's just another Tuesday for the Rox Pirates. Like, they just constantly go into these battles. I don't think it's like that. And then you could even say that, you know, this, Shakky being kidnapped, put him in a perfect scenario to take down the world government. Because as somebody up here said, right, a lot of the Celestials were there. Their top fighters were there. Across the board, it could be really good. And of course, he could get Shakky. Even if she doesn't date him or wants to date him, I think overall, it's just better to save her from that fate, right? The last thing I'd want for a character to do in One Piece is to get enslaved by a celestial dragon. So yeah, if I had the power to do something, I personally would. But yeah, essentially, when it boils down to all this, it really just becomes a matter of opinion, right? Some people will like it, some people will hate it. And that right there does lead us to the next poll. And it's this. Do you like the Treasure of Hachinosu reveal? So, I had to ask because I saw a lot of divided opinions. Hell, we saw divided opinions here, right? Some people like it, some people don't like it. So, I had to ask, do you like the reveal? We got 6,000 votes here. 53% say they did like the reveal. They did enjoy it. And then we have 28%, which said that they don't care that much, right? They don't like it, they don't hate it. It's just kind of, it's a story beat. And then we have 19% who said no, they do not like this reveal. It should have been something else. This one here, top comment says, I'm only here for the story. As long as it works, I ain't complaining. I really like it because it was unpredictable and Shakky is hot. Plus, I think there'll be more layers to it somehow. I think Shakky was bait to draw Rox to God Valley in order to kill him. What they didn't expect was the info leak causing Roger and every other pirate to pull up as well, which could explain why the Holy Knights were there as well as Saturn. I'm mixed. I think it's kind of funny, but the God Valley incident always felt like there was something deeper, more important at stake, and now it seems like it all just came down to, oh, they're fighting about Shakky, which is disappointing to me. But I trust and notice I won't judge too harshly right now. Yeah, what's funny about this too, right? When it comes to the Treasure of Hachinosu, even I personally thought that it was going to be a Devil Fruit. You know, I was like, oh, it's a Devil Fruit, it might be Rox's son, or, you know, something in that vein. So, Shakky being the treasure was something I just did not expect. Overall, though, I do tend to like this reveal. Because it's lighthearted, but it also is a whole thing where they're saving a girl. So it's like, yeah, I do enjoy that, right? You know, typically in anime and manga, like I said, it all comes down to opinion. I personally tend to really enjoy this trope in any anime. A great example, maybe not the best example because of the context, but Obito, right? Somebody brought up Obito in the last stream-video, and they're like, yeah, like this is kind of an Obito situation where they're pretty much throwing everything down for a certain character. You know, one character dies, they decide to just end the world and start all over. I enjoy that. But of course, Obito is a very divisive character as well, right? People do not like that he crashed out all over one girl. I tend to enjoy that. So it all just boils down to preference at the end of the day. All right, so this one says, I love it. It's funny. People are taking this story too seriously. That is kind of true. Like I said, One Piece has always been kind of goofy. It's odd because like sometimes One Piece is very serious, and then in other moments it's lighthearted and goofy. So Shakky is like, it's a weird mixture, right? Like God Valley is very serious, and then we have a little bit of a gag coming in here with Shakky. So it's a mixed bag when it comes to this right here. There's no way that Shakky was the only reason they fought over at God Valley, right? Right? Not saying I dislike this twist. It is a creative spin, I guess. Just in my opinion, a little underwhelming at the moment. I think that'll change once we see what actually happened there, though. Because at the end of the day, the treasure of Hachinosu isn't why God Valley is so renowned. It's because of what took place there. That is true. As long as we find out some new exciting information and get to see some cool fights, I'm honestly cool with any direction Oda takes us. I do see Garling scarring Whitebeard, though. I like how you had to add that in. Just, by the way, Garling versus Whitebeard, that takes place. Yes. I agree. You know, at the end of the day, the treasure of Hachinosu, this is just one aspect of the entire event, right? Just because we learn what the treasure of Hachinosu is, that doesn't really change too much. Like, we're still gonna get new information. We're still gonna get really cool fights, matchups, and crew dynamics. Like, we're still gonna get all of this. Shakky being the treasure, that just gives us a reason to go. That's all it really is. Oda, really out here writing Goon Piece. I didn't expect Katakuri to make a cameo in this chapter. Oh yeah, I forgot about Katakuri. Yeah. Labubu Katakuri is what people are calling him. I think that it's honestly interesting that God Valley might have happened initially because of Shakky, but boiled down to something much deeper as it went on. That is true, right? You know, for all we know, Shakky could have been saved ASAP. Like, you know, Shakky, she can fight, right? So the minute you get her out of shackles, her cuffs, her collars, she's fine. Right? At that point, that's when you focus on the God Knights and Saturn, etc. I think it was hilarious. But I agree, it should have been something way more important, as the Celestial Dragons or the WG taking Shakky was what caused Xebec to go to God Valley after Ginny wiretapped the event. It's what caused the fall of the Rocks Pirates, yes. The main thing, though, you know, when it comes to the fall of the Rocks Pirates, like, you don't expect to lose. I think that's my main takeaway. Is that I don't think the Rocks Pirates knew they were going to fall that day. It's kind of like when you go out for a drive. You, your wife, your kids, you hop in a car. Let's go to Dairy Queen. I heard they have a new twist on the menu. You hop in, you're driving down the street, you make this drive casually, right? You constantly go to Dairy Queen. And then one day, a drunk driver shows up, they hit you, your family's dead. That's it. There's no after story. You guys are all dead. Is that your fault? No. You're not a prophet. You didn't know you were going to die because you went to Dairy Queen. Like I said, Rocks and the Rocks crew, they've committed so many crimes. They've destroyed so many random towns and ports, stolen so many things. Rocks even attacked a Celestial Dragon ship and stole their tribute money. Attacking the Celestials here at God Valley, I do just think it's a regular Tuesday for them. And that is why it's like, okay, yeah, it caused the fall of the Rocks Pirates, but I really don't think they saw that coming, right? Like, they were those guys. Like, this was Rocks' era. Rocks losing probably was the last thing on their minds, man. So saving Shakky, it was probably just like a, hey, let's go save Shakky and let's come back home and get some beers. Like, hey, we're going to save Shakky and we're going to come back home and I don't know, I got spaghetti in the microwave, right? That's kind of how I see it. This says, I have no idea how Yes is winning in this poll. It's no, in my opinion. If you're the strongest and most violent group of pirates to ever exist, you should be able to have some self-control. Felt like Oda did this to make it a gag. I think he did do this to make it a gag. But, you know, I don't know if we read it earlier. I think we did. Yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if this has to do with the Void Century. Like, maybe we go back to the Void Century. We might get a parallel to this. We honestly might. We might get a whole thing where Emu gooned over a woman. He went somewhere, bad things happened. Same with Joy Boy. Maybe that's what caused Joy Boy to lose, right? I would not be shocked if we see another reiteration of this in the past. But yeah, I think this just goes to show that, you know, this is a pretty divisive chapter. Even though this is winning, the yes, I like this reveal at 53%, even though this is winning, it still shows that there is a good handful of people who are not fans of this reveal. It definitely may sound like an exaggeration when I say this, but I do think this is the most hated chapter of 2025. A lot of people are just coming out in droves. They do not like this. And like I said earlier, that is very fair, right? We can't expect everybody to like the same thing. I like the color red. I guarantee you, a lot of people don't like the color red. That is all it really comes down to. It's all just opinions at the end of the day, and there's nothing wrong with that, all right? There's nothing wrong with having an opinion that differs from the majority, the minority, or etc. So next up, we switch gears a little bit, and we go over to the cover page story. Who does the Wano grave belong to? So I went ahead and I listed all of the popular options that I've seen, some of the options that I even talked about. So we got 11,000 votes here. That's a lot of votes, actually. That's, yeah, it's more than those. Wow, that's crazy. First option, I paired them up because we don't have a lot of slots here. I put Ushimaru and Jigoro as slot 1, which is winning by 50%. Crazy numbers. Slot 2, I have Kyou or Shakky, and that comes in at 25%. I have Gecko Moria at 6%. And then now, as the fourth option, I have Hei from Darker Than Black coming in at 19%. And mainly, this is just an other category, right? It could be any character at this point. You know, some people are saying Odin. Some people are saying it's like a character we haven't met yet. So yes, the other category covers all of them. So personally, before we get into it, I put my money on Kyou. All right, we're going to get to the comments. I've seen some people saying that Kyou is a really odd pick. But the reason I vote for Kyou and or Shakky is because those are characters who have Japanese-Wano names. They have the kimonos on, which is, of course, very Wano-esque. And then as far as their backstories go, we know nothing about these guys, right? Were they born in the West Blue and then later raised in Ringo? Maybe. As far as, like, why they would defend Ringo, well, if Kyou, you know, going back to this first poll, if Kyou is the traitor, then maybe he was always good. Maybe he always wanted to just defend Wano at the end of the day, and that is why they decided to fight Kaido. So yeah, I could see this route. That's what I personally believe in. Of course, not the majority here. So now, let's get into the comments and see what people are saying. This one says, the people who voted for Gecko Moria is keeping the agenda alive at all costs. Yes. So to explain the Gecko Moria one, kind of like these, right? Kind of like all these other options, we don't know too much about Gecko Moria's past, but we do know that Gecko Moria did fight Kaido and Wano. As far as like the whole, oh, the body was obliterated without a single trace left behind, that could just be because Moria escaped, right? Kind of like how Moria escaped from Marineford. Maybe he did that same thing here at Wano, and people just assumed that he was long gone and dead. This one says, if it's Moria, it'd be due to Kaido not actually killing him, but blasting him away, maybe even a shadow thing, and the people in Wano not understanding how devil fruits work. I think it's whoever the traitor at God Valley is, because they were killed by Kaido, someone must have seen the betrayal, so either Shakky or Silveraxe. I think Silveraxe may also be like Drake, yes. Another thing about Silveraxe too, is that when we go to the grave in 1157, we see this giant stick in the ground, right? I think that stick is actually Kyou's axe. Because when you look around at all the other graves in the vicinity, we see swords, we see spears, and etc. Those other samurai were buried with their weapons as their grave markers, presumably. Maybe the Wano hero is the same way. And if it was Kyou, it would be his giant axe that we see on his back here. It would line up. This says, if they weren't born in Wano, it probably can't be Ushimaru. Yes. So this right here, I'm glad they mentioned it. Shout out to Jack Roberts. That is why I don't think it's Ushimaru. I've seen a lot of people saying it's Zoro's uncle Ushimaru. And I think that makes sense because he did defend Wano, and Kaido probably did just obliterate this man out of existence. But he's a Shimotsuki, right? He is a Shimotsuki, and to our knowledge, most of them, if not all of them, are born in Wano. I say most because we do have like the Shimotsukis that left Wano 50 years ago, but it would be weird if they left Wano, they gave birth to Ushimaru, then he came back and died. Like, it just would be really strange. So I don't think it's Ushimaru because of the West Blue line. Next up, we have this one that says, love the shoutouts to Darker Than Black. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Are you guys really reading the chapters? They said in the first page, 1156, that he's from the West Blue. That is true, yeah. I think that's one of the main things with the... I don't know. Like, for a lot of these candidates, we don't know where they were born, so that's why it's kind of tough, right? Like, even for Ushimaru, he should be born in Wano, but we don't know for sure, right? Oda could get really wacky with that one. This says, I'm calling it being my goat of the two-sword style Ushimaru Shimotsuki. Not related to the grave, but the fact that the Charity Palace is called Embezzle has me dying. Oh yeah, the Viz translated it as Embezzle, which is interesting. I don't know if they're going to go with that whenever we hit that place in the anime, but shout out to the Viz. This one says, I'm thinking Kyou, due to the Wano Yakuza links. He was also a hitman mobster before joining the Rocks Pirates. His name and clothing suggests he was a part of the mob in Wano. Also, Cho is the mafia boss in Ringo, and she is the one showing us the grave. That is true. I just think the most likely option is Kyou, just because it was like in one chapter apart, we got the grave and then Silver Axe. LMAO Gecko Moria. My favorite One Piece character. Other. Potentially Shakky. I think he was born elsewhere, but his attire always seemed like he was from Wano. Ushimaru makes the most sense. He was a Wano daimyo who fought Kaido's forces and died, making the grave a tribute to his sacrifice. His connection to Zoro and the Shimotsuki clan adds emotional and lore depth. Yamato visiting the grave of a fallen hero fits Ushimaru's story perfectly. Yes, this last line right here is one of the main reasons why I like it being Ushimaru, because Yamato is visiting it, right? Yamato visiting Ushimaru's grave, smart choice. That's, aside from Oden, this is her hero. This is the person who pretty much saved Yamato as a child. So Yamato visiting his grave, I think, is a massive W. The only problem is the defending Ringo line and the West Blue line. You know, like I said, we don't know where he was born. Oda could add that in, but right now it's up in the air, right? He should be born in Wano, but everything is subject to change. And then as far as defending Ringo goes, you know, Ushimaru broke out of the cave that was on Onigashima, and then he fought Kaido. Or at least that's what I understand. You know, I could be wrong when I say that. You know, it's been a while since we've been in Wano, but I'm pretty sure the cave where he was being kept in was on Onigashima. So if he were to leave Onigashima, go all the way to Ringo and defend the village from Kaido, I just feel like that would be really odd. Like, why not fight Kaido on Onigashima? Right? Like, unless Kaido wasn't home and he was in Ringo instead. Okay, let's see here. Next comment. This one says, it's literally Oden's grave. A hero from Wano that Kaido killed, and Yamato based her whole personality off of this would be full circle. The thing with Oden is that I'm pretty sure we know Oden was born in Wano, like, without a shadow of a doubt, right? Let me check. All right, so I'm looking at the wiki right now, and it does say that he was born in Wano. So I think that automatically eliminates Oden. And then the whole thing about, you know, this character defending Ringo specifically, it's like, wait, Oden didn't do that, right? Oden went to go fight Kaido, fought Kaido, lost, and then got boiled alive. It's not like Kaido obliterated his body in Ringo. So I don't think it can be him. Like I said, I think it would be a nice full circle moment, but nothing points at Oden right now. This says, if Silver Axe is a parallel to X-Drake, then he could be the traitor who took Shakky, which would explain why Kaido had to murk him. That would be kind of funny. Yeah, Kaido getting revenge, like, hey, you took Shakky a long time ago, you led to that power group disbanding, I'm gonna murk ya. It's clearly one of the former daimyo, or one of the former Yakuza bosses. This would be interesting. You know, at least with some of these other characters, we would know them. But if it's a former Yakuza boss, or former daimyo, I think this would be interesting because we wouldn't know who these guys are outright. Right? Like, I feel like for these, like, Yamato doesn't know who Kyou is. Yamato doesn't know about Gekko Mori or Jigoro. Like, these would all be for fans, right? These would all be for fans, like saying, oh, it's the Rock's Pirate flashback, or it's Gekko Mori. That's a cool throwback. But if it's actually just a brand new character entirely, they would just be really odd to add in. Like I said, it could fit. Because for the former Yakuza boss, Ocho is the one who's bringing us here. But we'd be like, wait a minute, who the hell is this person? Why'd we spend, 4 weeks trying to figure out a character we don't know? I'm pretty sure Shakky's still alive, Sai. I could be wrong, but I'm like 99% sure. As a fan base, we're waiting for his return because he said 20 years ago, and we're finally 20 years later. That is true. I don't think Shakky's dead. But then again, Shakky's whole story is very wishy-washy right now with what's canon, what's not canon, what does Oda want to do. So yeah, I think Shakky's alive as well. Back in Elbaf, I was speculating that Shakky might have been the guy off the coast. I mean, I was part of the whole, Shakky versus Scopper Gabon debate. So yeah, I think Shakky's alive. But people are saying that this could be a good way to write Shakky off the story. Which sounds crazy, but, it could be. It could be. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? Here we go. I like every option here. Yamato having that flashback makes me like Ushimaru's chances more. Sai, my dude. Nice darker than black reference. Okay. I like how many people recognize this as well. Old anime. Old anime, but it's nice to see people still know who this is in 2025. So now, for the final poll, this is a wacky one, I will admit. And also, not just wacky, but very, 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 very divided. Look at this. 19,000 votes. 5,000 right there. Almost 9,000. 11,000. 6,000. Dude. Uncomparable. Look at this. 19K. People showed out for the Crocodile woman theory. So, this is simple. This is a theory that is as old as time itself. Back when the dinosaurs were walking around, this theory was around too. Was Crocodile at one point in time a woman? Yes or no? So you might be wondering, where the hell is this theory coming from? Well, back during Impel Down, we got reintroduced to Crocodile in level 6. Crocodile said, hey, Luffy, Straw Hat, break me out. I'll help you. Luffy said, wait a minute. You're a bad guy. You sabotaged Vivi's country. I'm not letting you out. But that is when Ivankov showed up and said, hey, Mugiwara boy, we could use his help. Crocodile's a really strong fighter. And if he ever decides to betray us, I could just reveal his secret. And Crocodile was sweating bullets. He said, whoa, okay. Ivankov. And then because of that, Crocodile was more tame, we could trust him, and Crocodile joined the Impel Down escape force. Because of that line, because that whole interaction, people were saying, oh, was Crocodile once a woman? Because leading up to that point, we've seen Ivankov do that multiple times. And aside from that, there's not many things that Ivankov would have on somebody that they wouldn't want revealed. So yeah, that right there is where this theory spawns. And there are spin-offs to this. Another one is the Crocodile cover page story, where Crocodile has a bunch of birds flying through him, and then the chapter title is A Woman's Secret. So people are like, hey, look, it's an Oda hint, which could be something, could be nothing. Whenever it comes to stuff like that, we have seen a lot of instances where Oda has hidden things in chapter titles and in cover pages. The most recent example would be Roto, right? Roto from the new Giant Warrior Pirates. Whenever they were introduced, the title was I Will Be Back. And then we go to Elbaf, and guess what? Roto is back, and he's also the sun god. So we have seen a lot of instances, that's just one, where Oda has played with chapter titles and characters before. And people are saying that could just be another thing with Crocodile. And another thing, too, is that this image right here of Crocodile as a woman, this comes from an old SBS where somebody asked Oda to gender bend all the warlords, and Crocodile was one of them. And they later did this with Trafalgar D. Law, and of course that also later became canon whenever they were fighting Doc Q, because Doc Q turned Law into the female version of himself. Another iteration of this would be the Warlords. Somebody asked to see all the Warlords as kids. We saw them, and then years later, we got the Seraphim, which are all just kid versions of the Warlords that we already saw. So yeah, this whole thing being true, I do not think is insane. Personally, I do lean towards yes. And it just goes back to the whole Ivankov thing, right? If it's not Crocodile getting a gender change, I don't know what else it could be. And hopefully, when we go into the comment section, whenever somebody says no, I do hope they have an explanation to the Ivankov theory, right? Because that is something we have to tackle, right? Saying no is one thing, but I feel like you need an explanation for the Ivankov line. Like, okay, it's not this, it's this instead. And I think that'd be beautiful, but we'll see. Like I said, very, 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 very divisive poll. And top comment is myself. And I just wanted to throw this out there. This has nothing to do with Crocomom. Crocomom is an absurd theory that I don't want to even poll. Is that crazy? Like, I don't even want to see the numbers on that one. You know, I'm over here preaching, hey, I'm just one guy, just have an opinion. I want to see what people say. I don't want to see this one. I'm not throwing up the Crocomom poll, dude. I'm not doing it. Top comment now, besides myself, says, it would be funny, though, if the secret that Ivankov knew... Look at that! Look, explaining the Ivankov secret. Wow. What an amazing top comment already. I don't even know what they're going to say. So they say the Ivankov secret is that they knew something stupid. Like Crocodile actually has both of his hands and just wears a hook over one. That would be pretty funny. Funny enough, though, you know, speaking of funny, there was a anime scene where they showed Crocodile without his hook. And then I think later on, they clarified that that was a mistake. So that's kind of silly. What else kind of dirt can Ivankov, of all people, have to humble him with such ease? There's a reason why Crocodile's face wasn't shown during the Roger execution. This is also true. Right, Crocodile's face was very hidden during the Roger execution. We saw Doflamingo, we saw Buggy, we saw Shanks, we saw Smoker, and Gecko Moria as well. But for Crocodile, back of the head. And another thing too, I don't know if anybody will mention it, but alongside this, we have the Seraphim of Crocodile. We have the kid version of Crocodile. And people say that that confirms that Crocodile's indeed a guy. But, yeah, you know, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. It looks pretty androgynous. Is that the right word? Let me look it up. Define androgynous. Okay, yeah, androgynous. Partially male, but also partially female in appearance. Indeterminate sex. That is what I think, right? I think when I look at young Crocodile, I can't honestly tell if it's a guy or girl. And like I said, I'm one guy. I showed that to my wife. And I said, hey, is this a picture of a guy or girl? And they did say girl. But let me tell you, my wife kind of struggled a little bit on that one, right? They were kind of like scratching their head. And I was like, okay, there we go. That explains it, right? That is somebody who does not know why I'm asking the question. And they said, I don't know. Girl, maybe. So this says, the worst theory that One Piece community can't let go of. Please let this die. Is it the worst theory? No. Crocomom is the worst theory. You know, that is the one we need to let go of. But as far as Crocodile being a woman, right? There's no rebuttal here. There's no rebuttal. You know, like I said, it's one thing to say no, but we just need some sort of explanation about the Ivankov line. That's pretty much it, right? Let me see here. Also, speaking of the Ivankov line, this one asked the question, but they do have replies. Let me see. Yeah, so typically I don't read replies because, you know, people just kind of go back and forth on them. But I do want to see this one because it did ask the question here. He might have also been a slave of these celestial dragons. We've seen a lot of characters feel immense shame over that. Example, Boa Sisters, the Sun Pirates, etc. Plus, his character is somewhat similar to Guild to Sora from film Gold, so it works as a background. Okay. That's not bad. Like I said, all we need is a good explanation. This could be it, you know? Crocodile being a former slave could be a key reason. But and then we have another person coming in saying, bro, then you'd have to theorize who or how he gained his freedom. It makes things more messy. He's about the same age as Kuma, so it could have been a kid on God Valley. Maybe that's where he first met Whitebeard. Or could have been freed by Fisher Tiger like Hancock. There are a lot of former slaves around. All possible, I won't deny, but what emotional or narrative weight would there be for revealing that later, as opposed to while we had Fisher Tiger and Kuma's flashbacks respectively? To be honest, I don't know. I'm posing a hard question with Oda being a madman and all. Crocodile being a former slave would have been weird because unlike Ivankov, Kuma, and Hancock, Crocodile proceeded to work with the world government and destroy Alabasta Kingdom and its people. The thing with this, true, a little bit weird, but Guild to Sorrow worked hand in hand with celestial dragons during film Gold. So while it is weird, it wouldn't be unheard of. Ivankov was also a slave. Even if that's true, he wouldn't use that fact against him. That is another thing too. Yeah, Eva was also a slave of the celestial dragon, so I doubt he would blackmail someone with that, since he, Ivankov, also hates celestial dragons. He's Luffy's mom. No! We just had to have that one, right? We had all this beautiful back and forth, and then we end off, he's Luffy's mom. Okay. Yeah, like I said, all we need is a good explanation, right? If not Crocodile being a former woman, good explanation. All it is, all it is. I have a feeling Crocodile... Oh my god, one second. I have sausages in the oven. One second. My sausages are burnt. That's fine. That's fine. We roll with the punches, right? We're over here talking about One Piece. I have a feeling Croc used to be a shrimpy little guy till he asked for an extra injection of testosterone. It doesn't make sense in the One Piece world why Croc would be afraid of people knowing he was a different gender. Others might find a little weird, but it would make more sense if he was ashamed of asking for help to get jacked and cheat his way to be the macho man he became. That is good. Instead of earning it himself, then he kind of stopped growing in strength till he got his butt kicked by Luffy. Okay, wait a minute. I like this. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Yeah, extra injection of testosterone. I mean, hey, like I said, we saw the Crocodile Seraphim. It was very shrimpy, right? Compared to the other ones. Okay, Crocodiles had aura because of like the expression, but it was a shrimpy little guy. So maybe that's it, you know? Maybe Crocodile really wanted to fight Whitebeard, so they kept on getting injected by Ivankov. If Sanji ever fights Crocodile, and Crocodile in the past was a woman, then that fight will be very interesting. My guess is that Sanji himself will try to hit Crocodile, but Sanji's subconscious mind will make him miss the attack every time. That would be interesting. What's funny too is that, was it film Stampede? Yeah, it was Stampede, where Sanji was the one who fought Crocodile. Yeah, it was Sanji versus Crocodile, and then Zoro versus Rob Lucci, I think. Was that it? Or was that Smoker? It's been... I need to rewatch Stampede. Stampede's a good movie. You know, I'll stand by that. I like a lot of the One Piece movies, especially past Strong World. The ones before that, yeah, right? But the film ones are just great overall. Personally, I'd love it if he was, but I think it's something completely different. Oda's been really good at throwing curveballs. I don't think anyone predicted Bonnie was Kuma's daughter. In fact, most speculated Big Mom was her mother, which is why I'm pretty skeptical of Buggy being Rox's son. That is fair. The secret that Ivankov knew was that Crocodile was working on direct orders from the WG to take down Alabasta. Ooh, okay. A person like Crocodile being a government dog and taking over countries on their behalf would not look good for either Crocodile or the government. He had his own plan with the Poneglyph, though. That would be kind of interesting, huh? Emu, being so obsessed with Lily, wanted Crocodile to take down Alabasta. That's a different... I've never heard this angle before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Alabasta is important, right? With how obsessive Emu is over Alabasta, I'm surprised they didn't do anything beforehand. So that's not a bad theory. I do like the route you go down. This says, there's a chapter cover labeled A Woman Touched, and Crocodile is directly underneath it, so yes, Oda is trolling. Yeah, A Woman Touched might be what the Viz translated it as, but I saw A Woman's Secret. Let me see. Okay, I don't know if I could just type in A Woman Touched onto Google. You know, I'll just believe you. Instead of typing that in, I'll just believe you on that one. A Woman Touched, huh? I already gooned, man. I already gooned. Recently, a friend suggested the reason Croc didn't use Haki against Luffy was not to break Ivankov's gender transformation, and once he does, he'll become a woman again. Would be kind of a lit explanation and a good natural way to upscale Crocodile. That'd be kind of crazy. I would like to think that maybe you could like focus your Haki, like, hey, I'm gonna use armament Haki, but I don't want to cancel this, right? But if this was the explanation, wouldn't be bad. Wouldn't be bad. The better question is, did Rox get turned into a toy? Because that's the main way to get erased from history and not have anyone remember you or your face. Which is why I think why Kaido didn't remember his face and why Whitebeard didn't recognize Blackbeard. Sugar's Fruit was probably the thing that took Rox out. That or something similar. Interesting. Yeah, Rox getting turned into a toy and being forgotten about. Well, Sengoku remembered Rox, right? Yeah, Sengoku remembered Rox. But also, whenever Sugar disappeared somebody, you completely forgot about them. You don't even remember their name, right? So I feel like this wouldn't work. If rocks did get turned into a toy and got erased like that, Kaido wouldn't remember anything about Rock's Xebec. He would just go on life as if he was never part of that crew. And then same with Sengoku and etc. And then, you know, the minute Sugar's fruit gets recycled and Sugar gets it, which, you know, by the way, Sugar was not alive during God Valley, so this is like a previous user. Once they die or get knocked unconscious, it would undo the ability, and then everybody would remember that person. So I don't think this is the case. But I like how random this was. I like how we went from like crocodile, rocks turned into a toy. I do like the theory pop up. I feel like Crocodile might just be a slave of the past and got saved by Ivankov and Dragon. He just didn't want anyone to know about it and would kill to keep it a secret, just like Boa. Also in Marineford, after he heard Luffy is Dragon's son, he started to help Luffy. That is true. Okay.
Goes on a wiki history search on Crocodile's past to see what was the earliest we've seen him.
So when Crocodile was 20 years old, he fought Douglas Bullet. What the hell? Wait, when did that get established? Volume 189. Interesting. And that's like non-canon. When Crocodile was 20, he fought Douglas Bullet? That's so random. I don't even remember that. And then at the age of 22, he was at Gold Roger's execution, where we see the back of the head. And that is it. I think we had something even before that. Yeah, 16 years ago, at age 30, he went to Alabasta. Okay. Yeah, we have nothing on Crocodile before he was 20 years old. So there is a chance he could have been a slave for a long time. There is a chance. Have we ever seen Crocodile shirtless? I know that sounds weird out of context. Have we ever seen Crocodile without his shirt on? Because if so, we could look for a Celestial Dragon mark. Okay, I'm typing in Crocodile shirtless, and of course, we have everything that I did not want to see there. All right. So we have never seen Crocodile shirtless in the manga. So he could have a Celestial Dragon hoof on his back. I think that's pretty cool. Or we could go even further and say that Crocodile had the mark on his hand, and that's why he cut off his hand. And then now he has the hook. Maybe that is where the Celestial Dragon mark was this entire time. I think that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Yeah, like I said, this is perfect, right? If you vote no, you gotta have a reason for why Ivankov has dirt on him. And I do think the slave route is pretty solid. This does have some merit. Remember how Ivankov kept saying he knew about Crocoboy's past? Super masculine features with the Sir epithet to overcompensate. Yeah, this is what I thought too, right? You know, back then, I wasn't watching like One Piece YouTube. I was just watching the anime and reading the manga. And I remember, you know, as a kid, I read the Crocodile portion, and I just assumed that Crocodile was a woman. Like, without looking at theories or going online to any community, I was just like, oh, like, this probably means that Crocodile was once a girl, and then got changed over to a guy. And then I did think the Sir was to overcompensate, you know, just to really nail it in. So I think this is, you know, somebody mentioned it up here, right? The worst theory that the One Piece community can't let go of. I don't even think it's the One Piece community. I do think that just anybody who reads or watches One Piece, when they see that Ivankov scene, I think most people will just flock to this theory right here. Without any interaction with Twitter, Reddit, you know, Pirate King forums, or etc. I think this is just a question most people have. And, you know, because we never got the answer, and it's been like 15 years since then, it's very divided. It's very, very, very divided. All right, though. With that being said, though, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I really freaking appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and call it here because my sausages are ready to go. And it is, you know, I always like to time drop these videos because, you know, people don't believe me. But right now, it is 5:55 at night. 5:55 a.m. So I need to eat and go to bed. But thank you guys so much for being here. I really freaking appreciate it. Let me know what you thought about all these polls, all these discussions down below. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out and stay safe.